Hi, I'm Katerina. I'm an artist and my primary medium in my practice is my own personhood. I use my person, my body, my voice, my memory, to generate characters that deviate slightly from who I usually am. This is an instructional video on how to use the method of self-estrangement that I use in my own performance practice to get out of mental local minima or to think outside of the box. When I'm getting ready for a performance in front of a mirror, I watch myself gradually become different through slight modifications to my superficial characteristics, such as my voice, my gestures, or my appearance. And as I talk to myself in this slightly altered persona, I find myself persuaded by the process and I'm sort of carried off on a tangent to a completely different mental space. And then I find myself at once estranged from who I was moments before, but at the same time surprisingly natural and comfortable in this new character. I start thinking and saying things that I've never said before. Sometimes I actually say things I don't endorse or that are distinctly out of character to me, yet which again feel absolutely natural as they leave my mouth. Although I'm performing a character when I do this, I don't call it acting, and this is largely due to the method which I employ. Rather than training my mannerisms to match those of a target character that has been written or imagined in advance, I arrive at the characters through an improvisation technique that is fundamentally experimental in nature and which doesn't require the craft of acting to work. Instead, the character I arrive at is derived from simple and slight changes in how I look, act, or speak, and then just seeing where that takes me. Who I end up emulating is often a surprise to me by the end of the process. In theory and in my own practice, I expect that this method can be useful for generating thoughts that are uncharacteristic to me and which can therefore help with thinking outside of the box, or more specifically, thinking out of character. Although in my own performance practice I'm using the method to generate strange stories and eccentric characters for performance works, I think that the method can be used more broadly as a tool for brainstorming, so this video will go through a step-by-step process of what you would need to do to try it out for yourself. Of equipment you will need a mirror, a private spot where you can freely talk aloud to yourself without feeling embarrassed or observed. If you want to record yourself as you do this, then you will also need a video or sound recording device. Finally, if you want to make any change to your appearance, you may do so, but this is not necessary. But if you want to, it might include an article of clothing, a different hairstyle, or some makeup. The method of self-estrangement, as I'm calling it at the moment, is closely related to two different actions which may be familiar to you already and which you may well have done before. The first of these is almost certainly universal to everyone. We tend to change our character, our personality, quite significantly depending on who we are speaking to or what context we are in. This often has a lot to do with social roles. So who you are as a mother contrasts with who you are as an employee or who you are as a friend. And this in itself can mean that your posture, your sense of humor, even your accent changes depending on who you are relating to. And people who speak more than one language or who have lived in more than one country are particularly aware of this phenomenon. Some have told me that they're more funny in Russian than in English, for example, and others have said to me that they seem to be living in two different minds that switch depending on what language they're thinking in. In our self-estrangement method, this natural phenomenon from the everyday practice of being a person is something we will consciously tap into. The other related phenomena is something you also may have done before, and that involves standing in front of a mirror and looking carefully at yourself for a very long time. If you stick with it long enough, strange things start happening. Slowly your face seems to become disassociated from self-recognition, and it starts to look like a mask or someone else's face. You begin to look somewhat foreign and estranged from yourself. And of course, this is quite an unsettling but interesting experience. It's a kind of self-induced process of depersonalization. And something akin to this might begin to happen as we proceed with this method. So with those images in mind and with some privacy and a mirror at hand, we can give it a go. All you need to do is sit in front of a mirror and get comfortable. I'm using at the moment my camera as a mirror. And when you first see yourself, you easily recognize yourself. It's just you. Now all you need to do is change something about yourself. The change can be as small or as big as you like, but a small change is all that's really necessary. I always choose something which is easy to change, like my voice. When you start changing your voice or anything else, try to move towards something that is different, but which still feels comfortable to you. What usually happens to me is that my mind searches for a voice which feels familiar, and I end up imitating a blend of voices which I once knew. So for me, that could be like somebody with a Slavic background, because this is how my family relatives sometimes talk. Or it may go more towards something like a Scandinavian person, because I lived in Norway and I heard people who sound a little bit like this. It doesn't matter that the voice is in any way accurate or in any way imitates a particular person or culture. The only thing that matters is that it feels foreign but familiar and comfortable to you to utter in your mouth. It doesn't have to be the voice of someone from a different country. It just might be the voice of somebody from a different district in your town, or the voice of somebody older or younger. Another thing you can change is your facial expressions, your grimaces, your hand gestures, or your posture. You can become somebody who uses their hands a lot when they're talking, or you could become someone who always has a sarcastic, asymmetrical smile on their face. Again, do anything that is different, but which still feels natural for you to do. You might surprise yourself by what kinds of mannerisms end up feeling natural to you. Finally, another kind of change you can do is to change your appearance. So that can be something really small. Like so. And you can do all or just one of these things. It doesn't really matter. You're just playing with your person using a mirror. You cannot do it badly and you cannot do it well. The only thing you can do is experiment and just see what comes out. All you have done is reprogrammed yourself along some superficial dimensions to see what person results following some changes. If you haven't tried self-estrangement as a method for thinking before, then I recommend first doing this without recording yourself and giving it at least 15 minutes in front of the mirror. But once you have tried it, I think that you would be interested in seeing a recording of the process. If you'd like to record, you just repeat the whole process using a camera or a sound recorder. You can actually get equally interesting results from this method by only using your voice and only recording the sound as you speak aloud to yourself. What you say in front of the mirror, the camera, or the sound recorder might sound like a lot of nonsense. Do not worry about what you're saying or whether you are coherent. Just be curious and follow whatever thought processes arise through the lens of your altered self. You're merely experimenting with what kinds of things the altered you might say. If you're unsure about how to change your voice, mannerisms, or appearance, then think about the problem you want to brainstorm about. Imagine what kind of person could confidently talk about the problem you're exploring and begin to talk and behave more like the sort of person to whom you imagine good solutions would come easily. Perhaps they speak with an air of expertise or intellectualism. On the contrary, perhaps you need to borrow the personality of someone more reckless and less scrupulous in their reasoning. You shouldn't have to work hard at this. Rather, adopt the voice and those mannerisms which make it easier for you to think and speak about the problem. You might keep changing these things in front of the mirror or the camera until you hit upon something that feels right. Then you can dwell there in that personality for as long as you can sustain it. Eventually you'll get tired and you'll stop. You'll be back to your normal self. But if, like me, you end up doing this a few more times, you will inevitably wonder what your normal self ever was. Some scholars tell us that there is no state of being that is outside of performance. If this is in some sense true, then perhaps it can be embraced, and our non-essential personhood can be used as a tool for generating different characters which help us think in different ways in different situations. Perhaps a personality is a habit. Habits can help us become efficient, but they can also get us stuck in a rut and stuck in grooves of our reflexive thought and patterns. By performing your altered self and estranging yourself from yourself, you can effectively tilt the box of your mind and dislodge your thoughts from the tempting gravitational pull of habitual thought.